Dave here, how are you? I've been doing some more improvements for the stand and bench. One of the things I thought about was not everyone has a track saw. So I decided to make a track for my own construction saw. Now I have a 9 1/4 inch circular saw, probably a little bit big for this application, but something like a 7 1/2 inch saw would be fine. Now I'm doing this a little bit differently to what a lot of people would do as far as the guide's concerned. I've created a series of dog holes using the UJK Path Guide right the way down the side of this track. And I've keyed in a piece of 3/4 inch T-track. Now that T-track is perfectly in line with the dog hole system. And I'm going to show you how I did that. That is the big secret on how to do that. Now this whole system relies on tall dogs. Now these are tall path dogs. These are tall dogs from TSO products. These are small dogs from Festool. Now all of these have an 8mm thread inside them. The differences between these dogs, the path dogs and the TSO dogs, is the path dogs are stainless steel, the TSO dogs are aluminium. The tall dogs from TSO are about 0.1 of a millimeter narrower in the diameter and have a chamfer at the top. Now I found in this particular application that this dog is going to be the easier one to use. This one will do it as well, it's just that it's going to be a little bit tighter holding onto the track, and in this particular application I didn't want that finer degree of tolerance. I did need to be able to take the track off after I finished the cut. So here we go. This is how I made it. I brought in a sheet of 1/2 inch MDF, popped it up here on the table using the sheet lifter that I built, and doesn't that work so easily? And so I had to work out the width that I was going to cut it. I'm working on 3 dog holes in from the side of the stand and bench. The reason I've worked that distance, which is this distance across here, the reason I've gone that far across is the back of the saw, and I'll show you that. Back again, the reason I've done that is because the saw's motor has overhang from the plate. Now the sole plate is what will be riding on the track up against that key or that fence for the saw to push on, but you'll notice the overhang here. I did not want that overhang colliding with any of the dogs that are going to be sticking up through here, anchoring the track to the bench. The distance from here to the blade was also to be taken into account, so I needed to work, and also the edge of the bench. Now for this particular saw it was just over 1 foot wide for the whole system. At the beginning we need to work out the diameter not only of the dog, which is 20mm, but the top section, which is 25mm or 1 inch. So we need half of 25 is 12.5 plus, let's say 20 for the track, that's 32.5. So we need around 33mm off from the edge to make this system work. I drew a line down the board that width. I then got the path guide system out, the path stick, and drilled my first hole. Once I had all my pilot holes drilled, it was a simple matter of get the path guide system out again with a 20mm Forstner bit in it, and I drilled all the way through into my backing board. Having the hole drilled all the way through and using the MDF, I was getting no tear out on the back at all. So I show you both sides and you'll be pretty impressed with how clean these cuts were. I pop these dogs in, and then this T-track I push in hard against the edge, and I use my scratch awl. I should have used a Vicks bit, but I don't have a Vicks bit. Next time. But I use my scratch awl to find the dead center, and then I use very small screws to position the track where it's got to be. That track now is going to be the guide for my trimmer. So I take the path dogs out, and then I take the whole system over to my router table and set the trimmer up in the router. Don't need a fence here at this stage. I'm going to have the trimmer with, it's a spiral up cutter. The bearing on the trimmer will be riding along the edge of the aluminium T-track. So it is going to make this edge absolutely perfect. It's going to be absolutely parallel to the dog holes without measurement. It is going to be referencing off the dogs themselves. Now, why is it that important to have that perfect to start? We're going to take the track off now, and we're going to be left with a perfect edge parallel, as I said, to those dog holes. Put the saw guide over the top of the router table with the 3/4 inch cutter in and create a very shallow dado. That dado will be perfectly parallel to the outside, which also is in turn parallel to the dog holes. So we've got a reference now without doing any measuring. We are perfectly parallel all the way through just by referencing. Okay, now that we have that slot, now how did I work out that slot? I told you earlier that we need to make sure that the sole plate of the saw is going to be able to push up against a reference point there, cut so that we're not cutting into the bench, cutting outside the bench, and the motor of the saw is not hitting the dogs. It's pretty easy when you think about it. It's not that hard. That's been the limiting factor. Just as an aside, the limiting factor with this system has been that when you get to the end of the cut, let's say this is the end of the cut here on this dog, the motor would hit. So we'd need to have other dogs and go to that line there. You follow? So this has given me another 96 millimeters of cutting either side, because I can put a dog here right at the front and a dog down there. All right, so now we have all that done. Next thing to do is to give it a tidy up. So like all of my projects, I give them a sand with about 220 grit paper, and I wax them with either Triple E wax from U-Butte or their standard neutral wax, doesn't really make any difference, and Valai's, pronounced Felice, aluminium oxide pad from Festool, without the dust extractor hooked up while I'm using doing the wax. I use the dust extractor when I'm doing the sanding, of course. A little touch up around the edges with some sandpaper, and then the job to do is to actually cut the edge of the board, and that is my reference point now. So I know that that edge is exactly where my cut is going to be. Now it doesn't stop there. There's lots of things I can do that. Look, I can put those all the way down there, and it's supporting right the way through. Let me move those down there for you, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So I can put those there. I can put a nice wide board there if I want to. I can put a dog here. And I can slide this on anywhere I want. I like to put it so it's going to be balanced on the piece of timber. So that's about middle there. How's that? There you go. Now I can move this to my reference, to the mark that I already put on there, and do a cut. And it will be perfect. The other good thing is the cushion strip on the stand and bench, this stuff here, is also holding this for me very, very well. There we go. Have a look at that for square. It's not too bad, is it? So I would be able to do a cut there that is 18 inches between those dogs. I'd be able to get an 18-inch piece in, which is 455 millimeters. And then this direction, I can get 40.5 inches in between the dogs there, which is close enough to 1,030 millimeters. Lovely. The only thing restricting you is that you need to get your sole plate of your saw totally onto the guide prior to actually entering the cut. I normally look at having around 200 millimeters or 8 inches of the saw's sole plate on the guide before I want to actually get into the cut. The far side looks after itself. It will do it, not a problem, because all of the sole plate is there. The blade is doing the cut at the front. If you have your own circular saw and you don't want to invest in a track saw, by all means, this is a very, very economical way of getting by, and it does a decent job. If you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, keep on coming back. You never know, I might just one day make the video that you think, that's the one I've been waiting for. Keep on coming back, tell your friends, and I shall see you next time.